Everybody, welcome to the Ads on My Playlist podcast. Dave here with you. Very excited to have our guest today. Moxy Anne is here with us. We're going to talk a lot of music. I hope you like music. Well, I hope you do, because you're here on the Ads on My Playlist podcast. Moxy Anne is with me. Moxy Anne is going to share some amazing songs with you today. I'm so excited to have this conversation and so excited to share this with you. Moxy Anne on the Add to My Playlist podcast. I'm excited. You're excited. Go grab a coffee. We're going to have a great conversation with Moxy Anne. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I have a superstar. What? With me today. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit of a fanboy today. I'm sorry. If you're listening to this podcast, there's like 100% fanboy included with this episode. Moxy Anne is with me today. Moxy Anne is going to be sharing some amazing songs, and I have one of them that is just stuck in my head. We'll talk about that. But welcome to the podcast. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing so well, Dave. How are you doing?
Oh, gosh. You sent me a preview of one of the songs we're going to talk about today, and like I said, no lie, 20 plus times today I've been playing this song, and it's just gorgeous, and I'm so happy to have you on. And I've been listening to all the songs and adding them to my playlist, hence the name of the podcast. And so I'm hoping you're going to have a lot of new fans and a lot of new listeners after this. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure to be here. I am a huge fan of the podcast. I love the concept. I love what you do. And honestly, playlists are, ever since I discovered Spotify years ago, making my own playlist has been my favorite thing for years. So it is an honor to be here.
So that's kind of the idea, right? You talk to your friend and you're like, hey, have you heard this song? Have you heard this song? You should do this. You should listen to this. And we share them back and forth. And it just expands your listening base and expands, because sometimes you get stuck listening to the same thing over and over, right? And it's nice to kind of throw in a new song from a friend. And that's what we're doing here. We're friends here. We're all friends. We want you to hear new music and expand your library. So we have a lot to talk about today. So I hope everybody buckles in, because there's a lot of songs to share today. And let's start first, a little background about you, where you are in the world, and maybe kind of how you got started in music.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Moxy Anne. I am born and raised in Southern California, specifically Orange County, but I usually say LA because people outside of California don't know where Orange County is. But born and raised in Southern California, I grew up as a musician, kind of got my start at about 4 or 5 years old. My parents had a friend who taught voice lessons, and she heard me sing, and she thought, oh, this girl has some great natural pitch. Like, she's not, tone deaf like most 5-year-olds are. And so she took me in for a lesson and told my parents, she is a singer. You need to get her into lessons. And so I just started taking voice lessons. And for me, singing was always just kind of like this thing I could do. It wasn't, when you think about, oh, what's your talent? Writing. What's your talent? Doing audio engineering. Like, what's your talent? I didn't think of it as like a superpower or anything like that. It was just kind of this thing I could do. And then when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I saw my first rock band live. I saw the band. Have you heard of the band Red? It's a Christian rock band. Yeah. So I was at a Christian music festival, and I walked past the like token edgy stage that all the Christian music festivals have, and Red was playing, and they were just like screaming and huge guitars and jumping all around the stage and headbanging and everything. And I walked past it and I was just like, what is this? And fell in love with it. And then from that point on, my parents, they pointed me in the direction of some bands like Flyleaf and Evanescence. And
Flyleaf, oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and as soon as I heard both of those bands, and specifically Amy Lee's voice, I realized, and everybody tells me this, I have gotten beyond being tired of hearing it. I've gotten beyond being upset when people tell me I sound like Amy Lee. Now I'm just flattered. But when the first time I heard Amy Lee, I heard her voice and I was like, oh my gosh, I sound like her. She does this for a living. I could do this. And then that was kind of what started the love affair for me.
I hear that when I listen to your voice and listen to the songs. I can hear her through you. Like, it's crazy. I don't hear you through her. I hear her through you. It's amazing. Like, there's this, and then Flyleaf, again, a band's like, who? But if you listen to Flyleaf, I'm already a fan. That's great. That's amazing. Those are two powerhouses right there.
Definitely. Yeah, and they were huge inspirations for me starting out too.
Cool. So fast forward a little bit. I caught footage of you on stage with somebody people might know. Can you share a little bit of the story behind a choir and a rock band? Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Not just any rock band.
No.
Yeah. So I was on stage with Aerosmith a couple of years back, and no big deal. No big deal at all. The children's choir that I was in for about 6 or 7 years, Southern California Children's Chorus, they were hired to do, as part of Aerosmith's project tribute to the Boston Marathon bombing that happened years and years back. They did an orchestral choral version of Dream On, and they re-recorded it. They did a music video, everything for that. And Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, help. Yep. Am I remembering that right? Yep. Okay. I thought Steve Perry for a second, and I was like, wrong band.
Yeah.
But they were both on it, and so my sister did that recording, and she got to be a part of that music video. She has what we call the most epic prom picture ever, because it's just like her in a long formal black dress, and then Steven Tyler and Joe Perry with their arms around her.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But then they came to Los Angeles to do a concert at the Forum, the LA Forum, and they reached back out to the children's choir, and I was unable to do the music video, but then they reached out to us and they said, we want the children's choir for a live performance of Dream On at the Forum in front of like thousands and thousands of people. And I was just honored that I got to be a part of it. Steven Tyler was so nice. He, at one point, we all got to shake his hand. We all got to meet him, and he came up and checked on us while we were doing our sound check, and we could not hear ourselves at all. And this is how I knew he was a stand-up guy. He came up, and he was, in his rock star voice, too. He was like, hey, can you guys hear yourselves okay? And we were like, one very, very brave child was like, Mr. Tyler, we can't really hear ourselves.
Nice.
And he almost freaking beat up the sound guy. He was like, what the heck are you doing? Yeah. Why can't these kids hear themselves? Let's get a monitor up here right now. And so he was so nice, such a great person, great performer. It was just a pleasure to be a part of that, and an honor to be on stage at the Forum. Like, how many people get to do that?
Well, the way your music career is going, it's going to happen sooner than later. That's for sure. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to want tickets to that for sure.
I will get you tickets for sure.
That's amazing. Okay. So music is a big thing for you in your life, in your family. Tell me a little bit about some of the music that you've been doing in the past. I see there's other bands that you're part of. There's your solo work. Tell me a little bit about kind of the projects you've done in the past.
Yeah, that's a great question. And LA, Los Angeles is such a saturated market. I feel like everyone I know out here is in like 3 or 4 bands. I have done so many different projects, but the 2 most notable are going to be my original band that I started close to 10 years ago, I think. It's called MXI, and we are officially, as of now, we're on hiatus. We've been on hiatus for a couple of years, but back in the day when I was in high school, middle school and high school, and some of college, we toured. We did a national tour, toured through 19 different states, went to Mexico. We released 2 EPs, a couple of music videos. It was an all-girl band, and we were all under 25. Our drummer was the youngest. She was 12 at the time when she joined us.
Wow.
I know. Yeah.
So how would you describe that band and the music for that?
It sounded very similar to, have you heard of Hailstorm?
Oh, Hailstorm, yeah. Great band.
We were trying to go for like a Hailstorm sound, but we had a lot of influences, and my guitarist Sydney Ellen and I specifically, like, we got our roots in classic rock. She was a Led Zeppelin girl. We did a lot of Led Zeppelin covers. I love Motley Crue, Aerosmith, Def Leppard, all of that 80s stuff. So we tried to take like that 80s sound and kind of mesh it with some of the more modern acts like Hailstorm, like Flyleaf, Evanescence, some of the more prominent rock bands that are touring now. So if you can imagine like Evanescence, because it's me singing, but a hard rock band fronted by a different kind of Amy Lee sounding voice.
Yeah. I can hear it when I listen to the songs. I can hear all of these influences as you're talking. It's a nice mix of all these different things. I love it.
Thank you.
So you went and got married, and that's great. When did you guys get married, first of all?
We got married in June of 2021, so last year. It's been a little over a year.
Congratulations, by the way. That's great.
Thank you.
And you did something really special. I'm just doing a real setup here for our conversation. You can go out and buy your spouse, partner to be a nice gift, but you did something very unique. What did you do? And let's kind of lead into this conversation about what you created for your husband to be. Yeah.
Well, and do you mind if I give a little backstory here?
I love it. Please.
So this song, the song that we're talking about right now is Hysteria by Def Leppard. And Def Leppard is my husband's favorite band by far. He has a lot of favorite bands. He's a music obsessed nerd, which you can tell by his cassette collection behind me.
I love cassettes.
Us too. But I actually met him through a dating app, and we connected because he had a picture of himself holding a Def Leppard record in his profile picture. And that was like the whole reason we connected. And then we found out we had so much else in common, but that was what we connected over. And for him specifically, he has always been the hugest fan of Def Leppard. So my husband has a rare form of epilepsy, and thankfully it's not life-threatening. It's not something that now affects his daily life, but when he was diagnosed, it did. He has something called idiopathic reading epilepsy. It's a myoclonic form, which basically just means that it can be triggered by things like eye movement. And so at the time, he was an avid reader when he was diagnosed in high school. And he read a lot. He watched a lot of media. He did a lot. He was a normal high schooler. And when he was diagnosed, he was unable to do anything that he could normally do. He pretty much, when he was diagnosed, he had 2 grand mal, and then he was just kind of like had to lay in a dark room and let his brain rest. And so because of that, pretty much the only thing he could do was listen to music for quite a while. And Hysteria, for him specifically, I mean, he had always loved Def Leppard, but like that was his song when he was getting through that dark time. That was like the song that was always with him when he was going through that dark period, when he needed to listen to something. That was the song he would play. And then either by, on purpose, by design, or by accident, Hysteria ended up being a song that was played during pretty much every significant moment after that point. So like it got played at parties. It got played, just shuffling randomly on his iPod when he was walking into his first day of class. It got played when he was driving in the car on his way to a bad breakup. It was played at graduations and on really special days for him. And so that song for him, it just like, it has so much meaning.
Yeah.
And so when we were getting married, my favorite part of planning the wedding was getting to choose the music because, you have like you've got the grand exit, the grand entrance, you've got the first dances, you've got your processional, all of this stuff. And when we came time to choose the song for the first dance, specifically his and my first dance, I was like, there's no other song we can choose. Yeah. We have to use Hysteria. And I don't know if you've listened, Dave, have you listened to many other covers of Hysteria? Have you heard a lot of other covers?
Well, if I have, I've completely forgotten about them because yours is the best. I gotta say, sorry. But you two, again, until we hear the song later in the podcast, you'll understand what I'm saying. You will forget them all. Sorry to derail you, but no. I don't remember any other.
No, you are too kind.
I don't remember any of them.
I don't know how I'm going to do any other interviews after this. You are too kind.
Hey, it's amazing.
Well, and there are some really, really fantastic Hysteria covers out there. I'm not bashing on anything in particular. It was just hard for our purposes to find something that was either the right tempo or the right feel of the song, because we wanted it to be really romantic, really soft and slow so that we could dance to it. We ended up finding a cover on YouTube that we practiced to, and that I told Bradley's my husband, that I told Brad we were going to use for the first dance. And he believed me because he's very gullible. But what really happened was when I realized that we weren't going to be able to find a cover that worked perfectly, I was like, well, why don't I just record my own and just keep it a secret and surprise him? And so I worked with two guys. They're not really my brothers, but I call them my brothers, Jeremy Valentine and Brandon Wolf of the band New Year's Day. I worked with them, and this song was actually a wedding gift from them to me.
Nice.
Yeah, and I worked with them to arrange this song, to figure out the tempo, best key, orchestration, everything like that. They were fantastic, and I went up to record with them about a week or two before the wedding. And then on the day of, I'm shocked that we managed to pull it off, because even in the program, I did programs for the day of the wedding. Yeah. And I had another friend who was helping me do the processional song, which was a piano version of one of our favorite songs that was significant to us when we started dating. And so I was like, well, I have to put he arranged this. I have to put his name in it. And if I'm putting his name in the program, I should put Jeremy and Brandon's names in the program. But I have to show my husband the program before I print it. So,
nice.
So I showed him the second to last draft of the program, and then I put their names in it, and then I was like, all right, you are in charge of programs for today. Don't let Brad see the programs.
So he had no idea.
He had no clue. He didn't see it coming at all. And you'll see we put together a music video for this song from the wedding footage from that day, from our wedding video. And we put in the second verse his reaction to hearing the song for the first time. But his eyes like went wider than I've ever seen them. He looked at me once I started singing on the first verse. He looked at me and he was like, no way.
No. Wow.
It was so wonderful. And he said it was the best gift I've ever given him, which I don't know how I'm going to top that, but but I don't care, because it was perfect.
So, okay, before we hit play on this song, so everybody can add this to their playlist, a little bit about the recording process for this song. Anything stand out? Any memorable parts for you as you had a short timeline to create all this?
Yeah. You'll notice as you're listening to this song, it's very stripped down, very simple, but with the complexity of different string instruments, different orchestration in there. And that was all Jeremy Valentine and Brandon Wolf's doing. They are supreme professionals at what they do. They're so good at it. But you'll notice we took some things out. We shortened it a little bit for the purposes of doing it for a first dance. And then there are some parts in there, I think specifically on the second verse, where in the original recording, he goes, open wide, that's right. And I left out that's right, because they were like, no, this is a wedding. There are people there.
I love it. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so it's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been listening to this song in particular on repeat over and over and over and over. And I'm so happy to share with everybody on the podcast today. Would you like to do the honors? Would you like to invite people to add this to their playlist?
Yes, please. If you're listening to this, go ahead.
Add this to your playlist here on the Add to My Playlist podcast, right? Hit that little bell, that little thing. Here we go.
Yep.
Here it is. Our version, the best cover version you will ever hear of Hysteria. Def Leppard fans and Def Leppard yourself, you need to listen to this. Here it is on the Add to My Playlist podcast. Hey, thanks for dropping by the Add to My Playlist podcast. This is the external version of our podcast for non-Spotify listeners. But if you go to Spotify and sign up, you can actually hear the song played here in the podcast without leaving. It's great. Otherwise, you can check us out on YouTube. We'll have links to the songs that we're speaking about within the podcast that you can click on and hear the songs there on YouTube. But thank you so much for listening to the Add to My Playlist podcast. Jump over to Spotify and check us out over there and see what you think. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Okay, so that was the cover that I've been telling you guys about from the beginning. The cover from Def Leppard, Hysteria. Again, what I love, again, we talked about this, is when you come out, just be like at the end, and you're like, Hysteria, when you're near that part, when you're singing that for me, I can't wait for the next time that you do that in the song. Like, it's just, it's like the song sits on a shelf for a second, and it just stops, and your line is there, and then the song continues. It's like, oh, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. I love it in the guitar at the beginning.
Thank you.
And the strings. Like, okay, so it's beautiful. So let's talk about the guys again that helped you with this. Is it Wolf Studio?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Wolf Studios, yeah. Yeah, they have a production. They're pretty much a one-stop shop if you're wanting to write, record, release music. They're based out of Palos Verdes, I believe, in Southern California right now, but they work nationally. And actually, it was just announced the other day that they are back as part of the rock band New Year's Day. Yeah, so if you know of New Year's Day, you'll probably know Jeremy Valentine. He was their lead guitarist for a time. Brandon Wolf, he's their bassist now as well. So they're doing both. They're working through Wolf Studios, doing recording, mixing, mastering, everything through there. And some writing as well. I'm actually writing other music with them in the meantime. Yeah.
There's some connection with one of their parents or something too? Is this true?
Yeah, there is. So, and I know we spoke about this when we initially had our pre-interview, Dave.
Yes.
And I asked if you were a fan of 80s Christian metal or anything like that. So if you know of the band Holy Soldier, I know you do, but if you're listening, if you're listening and you've heard of the band Holy Soldier, you will probably know the name of their one-time lead guitarist, Robbie Wolf. Well, Robbie Wolf, the lead guitarist for Holy Soldier, is actually the father of Jeremy and Brandon Wolf. And we met because our parents were friends, and this is why I call them my brothers. Our parents were friends back in the 80s at this heavy metal church in Los Angeles called Sanctuary. It was pastored by Pastor Bob Beeman. He lives out in Nashville now. It's a church that a whole bunch of Christian heavy metal bands came out of. Specifically, I think the most famous would be Holy Soldier and Vengeance. If you've ever heard of Vengeance with Larry Farkas and Roger Dale Martin, and and I know that Stryper was involved with Sanctuary as well. So, yeah.
So we can go down a whole wormhole here. This is great. That's kind of my day. I feel old now, but that's my day. So that's I can nerd out on that all day. But okay, that's amazing. That's really cool. I love that connection. And when you mentioned that when we talked earlier, I had to go back and listen to all that as well, in between your songs, obviously. So that's amazing. I love the story behind that. Thank you for sharing that. There's another song you want to share. It's completely different.
Yeah.
This song is written around your sister, right?
It is, yeah. Yeah. So the second song is called Bella's Song. That's the second song we're sharing today. And this song, it's part of the second EP that I released with MXI. The EP is called The Best Revenge. It's the inside meaning behind The Best Revenge is the saying, living well is the best revenge. But it is an acoustic song. It's the only acoustic song that I did with MXI. And it was written by myself and my lead guitarist at the time, Sydney Ellen. She's a guitarist. She works for Fender now, works a lot in the Los Angeles area. Yeah. But we wrote it together, and the meaning behind the song is it was written specifically for my little sister, Bella. She is about 3 years younger than I am, and so what that meant was when I started getting into rock music, she started getting into rock music at the same time, but 3 years younger, and like she wasn't even barely double digits when I started. And so she was really, really heavily influenced by that, and she has some mental just struggles, challenges. She really struggles with depression. She has at the time she had some pretty crippling anxiety and ADHD, some other things that she was struggling with at the time. And then when I got into rock music, she started to go down the wormhole of Tumblr and that community where the methods of helping yourself are not quite so prevalent. And so she really got sucked into the community, and she self-harmed for a time. She was suicidal for a time. And specifically when I wrote Bella's song it didn't start out as a song. It was a rant that I wrote in my journal after we found a suicide note that had been thrown in the trash. And I think she was like 14 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we went through family counseling. She went through one-on-one counseling. She was on medication for a long time, and nothing quite seemed to help. And finally, my mom, and I told you about this during the pre-interview, my mom finally just kind of threw her hands in the air and was like, that's it. I am sending you to Kenya with your uncle. My uncle has a Christian reggae band and they do missionary work. And that kind of came out of left field. I'm sorry. Without context, It sounds weird. But my uncle has a Christian reggae band called Christafari. And we had done some missions work with them in the past, and they were about to go on a month-long missions trip to Kenya and specifically spend a lot of time in Kibera, which is the largest slum in Africa. And so my mom was finally just like, I don't care. Like, you are so privileged and you're not getting better. And I'm tired of screaming fights. I'm tired of trying different medications. I'm going to send you on a missions trip. And she sent my sister to Africa for a month, which does, in hindsight, that sounds a little extreme, but, but she came back and we picked her up at LAX, and it was like I had never seen my sister smile before like that. Like, she found Jesus on the trip, and she spent the whole time just ministering to people and meeting, orphans who had AIDS, and meeting people in these impoverished communities and helping them and actually transforming from the inside out. And ever since then, she decided, like, once she came back, she was like, I don't want to go into music. I don't want to go into art. She's a super creative person, but she decided on that trip that she wanted to dedicate her life to doing missions work and humanitarian work.
Nice.
And so, wow. It was right around that time that she got back that Sydney had sent me a recording of this acoustic song that she started to write on her guitar. And she sent it to me and was kind of like, I know this is different from everything we do, but check it out, see what you think, and maybe we can write something to it. And usually what I do when I start to write a new song that I don't initially have an idea for is I look through stuff I've written in the past. And it was probably just a month or two later that she sent that to me, and I was like, I'm going to flip through my journal and see what I have. And I came across this page that had the rant that I wrote about Bella when we found the suicide note. And it was written almost in like a poem-like fashion. And I looked at it and I was like, I bet this would fit really well under what Sydney wrote. And I put it to the music and it fit so perfectly. And then I barely changed anything about it from what I initially wrote a year prior to that to what it sounds like now. I barely changed it. The only thing that I added was the bridge. And I know I told you about the bridge before. If you listen to the bridge, the the lyrics for the bridge are, "This song was so you could hear and understand that your entire life is at hand. But beauty looks like you already knew. It only took a year for light to break through."
Wow.
Yeah.
See?
And it
That's
gives
what I
me
love.
chills.
I love hearing the stories, right? I love hearing the story behind the song, because you can hear a song and sometimes the words can just fly by and you're like, but when you can get a good sense of what this is about, and, you know, it just makes you appreciate it so much more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. And for us, I mean, we were a band that existed really in that like Warped Tour time when there were so many different bands that talked about cutting, that talked about suicide, that talked about depression. And it was kind of the start of the turn where everybody was not dwelling on that, but instead focusing on self-help. And so we worked a lot in that community when MXI was active, and when we were playing concerts and such. We would always go in and always advocate for self-help, self-love, self-confidence, especially as young girls. Like, we were all battling it ourselves. And Bella's song, it's I think it's probably, I will still say, the best song that I've ever written, but it's one of my all-time favorite songs that I get to perform, that I get to sing, because I've seen people hear it, and I've watched people hear it and how it affects them and how it makes them feel and how it helps. And I just getting to be part of something so powerful is, yeah.
So go back to that day when you stood up at the stage and you saw Red play and you're like, wow. And now fast forward, and now you have a stage with all the great music you're producing, and now there's kids coming up to the stage looking at you going, wow. And to be able to share that message, like a Bella's song, for example, like, that's not only are you using the stage to promote your music, but you're also there to help people and promote that. I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It kind of makes me tear up, honestly.
All right. So Bella's song, we'll give you a break so you can collect yourself, because it's a beautiful song. Can you introduce Bella's song to everyone?
Of course.
And invite them to add this to their playlist? I'll leave this one up to you. This one's yours.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, if you're listening, go ahead and add Bella's song by Moxy and the Influence to your playlist. Go ahead and click that little button, and hope you enjoy.
Beautiful. There it is, Bella's song. Click that and add to your playlist. I love it. Here we go. Hi everyone, this is Dave from Podcast. Just jumping on quick to tell you about TrueMediaSolutions.ca. What is TrueMediaSolutions.ca, you're asking? Well, TrueMediaSolutions.ca is the umbrella that is over all the different podcasts that we do here for you. We have several different podcasts, so if you go to TrueMediaSolutions.ca, take a look and you'll find all of the different podcasts that my wife Jennifer or myself do, either separately or together. Check us out. Find out more about the podcast that we're doing by going to TrueMediaSolutions.ca. We'll meet you over there. See you soon. Okay, so that was Bella's song. Welcome back to the Add to My Playlist podcast. I have Moxy Anne with me, and we're having a great time. Woo! And again, 2 great songs to add to your playlist. We have so many songs to do that we've decided to break this into 2 podcasts. So stay tuned, because there's going to be another podcast episode right after this one. More songs to talk about. But for those listeners that are listening to you maybe for the first time, what would you like to say as we close off this portion of the podcast before we jump into the next one? What would you like to say to the listeners out there? Maybe there's somebody listening that's like, I would love to get into music. How do I do it? How would you encourage them?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you're listening, if you're hearing this part of the podcast, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen all the way through. And I hope that you liked the music. I hope that you liked both songs, and I hope that they meant something to you. Especially, my passion starting as someone who started singing at about 4 or 5 years old, like, my passion is always to encourage other young people to sing, to encourage other young people to learn to play music, and just know that it'll touch your life in ways you can't imagine. You're going to meet so many people and make so many connections and experience new things. And just don't even focus on trying to make it big. I think after COVID, there's a growing movement to not have to create and not have to make money off of what you're producing. And I was just talking about this with someone yesterday. You know, during COVID, there was like a group of musicians who were like, okay, I'm going to use this time and I'm going to make a new product and I'm going to use it to market and learn and use all this free time that I have. And then there was another half of the group of musicians that I know personally in LA who were just kind of like, I just need to exist. And I need to learn to experience music, and I need to learn to love music for just being music and not trying to make a career, not trying to make money, not trying to be a super huge star. And for me, I mean, I fell into that second camp. I just learned to fall back in love with music, and music has always been my first love. And if it's yours, just fall in love with music. Just spend time doing it, not because you want to be the next Steven Tyler or the next, the next, I want to say Vince Neil, but I don't know that anybody wants to be.
No, there's one. No, there's
but
one.
Like, yeah. But don't try to force yourself into loving music just because you want to be a huge star. Love it because it is what it is, and then that'll take you places you've never dreamed of.
Never forget the kid standing at the edge of the stage looking up at you and going, wow.
Yeah.
Because that's all of us at one point.
Yeah.
And again, to be able to take what you've done and be able to help people, it's great. So thank you for being part of the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Dave. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait for the next one.
So glad to have you on the podcast. How do people get in touch with you? How do people get in your world? What's the best way? Where are you most active?
Yeah, so you can follow me anywhere on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of the major things. You go search at Moxy Anne Music. That's MoxyAnne Music, spelled normally. And you can also find my website, www.moxyanne.com.
There it is. There's all the information you needed to know. Please go follow. Please go add. Let's just do this. Let's just add every song that's on Spotify to your playlist. We just shared a few, but there's so many great ones out there we didn't get a chance to talk about yet. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. We really appreciate you being here, making time for us.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for making time for me. This was incredible,
Again,
Dave.
the door is
Thank
always
you.
open. There's no lock on the door. You can come back anytime. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right.